So in today's video, we're gonna be looking at how to prep your session and export multi-tracks for a mixing engineer, or if you just want a fresh start on your own session, then it's also perfectly applicable if you're gonna be mixing yourself. My name is Tyson. I'm a mastering engineer at dinosaurdogstudio.com. And before we dive into the content, I want to let you know I have 2 free guides for you if you want to pick them up. The first link in the description is an EQ and compression guide that you can get for free just to help you level up your mixing and get more professional mixes. All right, without any further ado, let's dive straight into the content on how to export your multi-tracks properly for a mixing engineer. This is the cleanest and easiest way to export tracks for you. Just follow this step by step, then you'll have a clean export for your mixing engineer to then do their magic on. First step as you're diving into your session is make sure that any tuning plugins, timing plugins, anything related to editing is printed on the track itself. I don't actually have any in this session, but just for the sake of example, if I have this lead vocal here, and say I have this Melodyne plugin, I've tuned some stuff, that is just on the plugin itself. It's not currently on the track. So what I want to do is I want to come here to the track and hit either Control B or go up to File, Bounce, and bounce track in place. What this is going to do is then print any processing that I have on plugins onto the track itself within this session. The important thing is I don't want any other processing on it other than editing, right? So if I have a compressor on there or an EQ, I don't want that included. So I want to disable that before I bounce that in place, because anything I have active on here is going to be then printed onto the file in the session. Then you're done with step 1. Step 2 is going to be removing any extra tracks in the session that you don't want your mixing engineer to have. For example, I have this reference up here that I don't need in this, so I'm just going to delete it to avoid any confusion. When I send these tracks to my mixing engineer, they don't need to know that. Looks like I have an extra kick. I'm going to delete that as well. And let's just check through my buses to make sure I don't have anything else. Looks good overall. Oh, I've got my harmony bus, ad-lib bus. All right, so yes, that all looks good. All these tracks I want my engineer to have. The third step is to remove any effect plugins that I have on this mix. I'm just gonna go through and I'm just gonna disable all of the plugins that I have in this entire session. So this has a rough mix on it, but I don't want to print anything on these tracks, right? One thing that I actually did forget to mention is make sure you name all of your tracks before you get to this section. Everything in this section is already named. So for example, my acoustic kick, that is already named. We don't need to be renaming it again after this. So as long as everything is named, it's not just audio 1, audio 2. You want to make sure that everything is named appropriately before you send it off to your mixing engineer to make their process as smooth as possible before doing that. So the next step is now actually exporting the tracks. One thing that you might be tempted to do is just go straight up to File, Export, and then all tracks as audio files. I don't actually want to do that because I have buses on here. So I have this drum kit bus that includes all of these tracks. What my mixing engineer would receive is the drum bus plus all of these tracks individually. So we're basically doubling up on tracks, creating some confusion on what we actually want our mixing engineer to have. And so they may not make the right decision based on whatever your intention was. So just to be as clean and give your mixing engineer as much flexibility as possible on their end is to just export the individual tracks. I'm going to select all of the tracks inside of the bus, but not the bus itself. I'm going to skip my drum parallel because that's another bus. I'm going to now hit Command and select the next one. And then now I'm going to press Shift and come down to there so that I selected all of the tracks within this bus. And I'm going to continue going through and doing this for all of the individual tracks. I'm skipping all of the buses that we have. A lot of vocals on this one. Okay. So now that I have everything selected, I am now ready to actually export it. So I'm going to hit Command E, or you can go to File, Export, 58 tracks as audio files. You just want to do the ones you've selected, not anything else. So tracks as audio files, I'm going to do it to my desktop. Go to this bounce folder. Here is you want to turn normalization off. None of your tracks should be clipping. So you want to turn the normalization off. You don't want any processing at all on these tracks when you send them to your mixing engineer. And then other than that, as long as everything's appropriately named, you're ready to export these tracks. So I'm gonna hit export and it's going to do its magic. So now that I have exported the tracks, I'm gonna import them into a new session just so you can see what it will look like from the other end. So on your mixing engineer's side, when you import these tracks. I'm gonna go here and grab my files and put them in here. Let's see, create new tracks. All right, so it looks like I have all of my tracks in here. Obviously, your mixing engineer will have a little bit of work to do to organize everything, but everything is here, everything is labeled, so it should be a pretty fast process in terms of how to actually organize the tracks for their mixing workflow. So I hope this was helpful in determining actually how to process things. Again, the most important thing is do not have any baked in effects when you're bouncing your tracks, like reverb or delay. Those are the worst. But also any compression or EQ, don't have those included on the track, but make sure that anything that you have in terms of editing, or another example is amp simulators. If you have those on your guitars, make sure that those are baked into the track before you export. Thanks for watching and have a great week.